Welcome, everyone. We're going to talk to an official soothsayer. Soothsayer is someone who tells you what's going on all around in the universes. And my dear friend Linda Schurman has been soothsaying for us for many years and for many other people. Welcome to the show, Linda.
Oh, thank you. It's so nice to be on your show. You're a soothsayer yourself, so
Yeah.
we're very compatible.
We are, and we are also funny enough about it too, because there's a lot going on out there. I
Yes.
want this to be a linear progression of ideas, but I bet it's not going to be.
We'll try.
Anyway, Linda's had a long-term history as a wonderful astrologer. And I know there's a lot of tumultuousness going on in the planets and in the universe. And I keep watching Linda going, is it so tumultuous that we're looking at a fairly rapid evolutionary streak out there?
That's my opinion.
Well, then you're hired. No,
Yes.
I'd love to hear your opinion. Tell us what's going on, and then I'll push you around and argue about the things I don't understand, okay?
Well, first of all, as an astrologer, I need to focus on a chart, an astrological chart, in order to talk about the major predictions that I have, of course, for the planet as a whole, which is a vast landscape. But mainly, I like to focus on the chart of the United States because we are the most powerful nation on Earth.
Are
Even
we still?
I think we still are, in spite of what we're going through. And I think my job is to help people to understand what the United States is going through in its history astrologically. That
Okay.
we got our Pluto return, and our Uranus is returning to our natal Uranus. Pluto, which sandblasts everything, upheavals, explodes, and then regenerates. And Uranus, who makes intellectual, technological, and educational transformations, are returning to the chart of the USA, which we're fighting for our very existence. And when I look at the chart of the USA, what this chart is really about is the concept of democracy, whether
Okay.
humanity in a nation or in even on an island, in a large nation or locally, has the capacity to govern itself, to elect its leaders, which is what the American Revolution was really about. It was about a lot of other things, but it was about the economy, which is always the bottom line, which wasn't working for the colonists in relationship to the British because they were taxing tea and guess what? We're struggling with these many of the things that our forebears struggle with to
They're
create
foundational, are they not? I mean, my gosh.
foundational, exactly.
Even saying taxes, I go, uh-huh, we've really got that.
Yes, the Tea Party, the taxes, how do we have to tax in order to have the money to create an effective infrastructure that protects the people at large. At the same time, we need to promote entrepreneurial capitalism because that is a system that works. Right
Mhm.
now, capitalism is a plutocracy, which is a handful of giant corporate heads that literally have the corporations own more money than most nations do at this point. In this country, the 1% own between 80 to 90% of this nation's wealth.
But I ask you this, is that a sign of democracy? No, it's
It
not.
is not. What has to now, this is what we're examining now as these planets are returning to the chart of the USA. What does it take to create an effective democracy among a nation that spans from the Atlantic to the Pacific Oceans, which was nothing like the original America, which was on the Atlantic coast region? What does it take to really have an effective democracy and pull ourselves together and act together in our national interests in 2025? What does it take now to do that? That's what, because if we don't solve that riddle, we will wind up under a governance of, like we have, of a dictator or a monarch. And I have to say to you that Donald Trump's chart is almost identical to the astrological chart of Mad King George, who was
Right.
King of
I've heard
England
that.
at the time of the American Revolution. And I'm fond of saying what has happened is Mad King George has come back to haunt us and to
Mhm.
ask us once again, what do we have to do as a people to unite against a monarch, a dictator, a strong man, or an autocrat? All of those are terminologies used to describe the same thing. And we're now looking at the consequences that I think we had to face in order to examine this. Now, what does it take? It takes an well-educated public. Public education, interestingly enough, uh, our forefathers had the best education of their era. These guys were brilliant. They were geniuses.
Mhm.
Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, Adams, all of these people were a group of the most highly educated people in the world at that time. In the meantime, over all these years, we've been a nation. When Uranus has been in Gemini, we had the Civil War. And our nation nearly broke apart during the Civil War, the last time Uranus
But
transited.
isn't Uranus a kind of a
It,
very
it,
active
it
time?
is a planet of revolution,
Hmm.
of invention, of massive change, of ideas and ideals. And it was there during the Civil War. Well, we won the Civil War to get rid of slavery as an economic foundation for our country. It was about economics primarily.
Hmm.
We won that battle. Then the next time Uranus was in Gemini, returning, was in World War II.
Oh
And,
my.
and remember, prior to World War II, there was a lot of pro-Nazi people over here in America, where Uranus has been in Taurus the past 6, 7 years. We have revisited where Uranus was during the rise of the Third Reich in Germany in the beginning of World War II. We've been re-experiencing that. So a
Hmm.
lot of neo-Nazis over here in the United States have emerged, and many of their ideas and ideals have been embodied by the Trump administration.
Hmm.
So we have had to face that. Now Uranus is going into Gemini again, and we won World War II. We went in, we fought with the good guys, we defeated the Nazis and the Japanese and the attack. We defeated fascism in this
Hmm.
country. And following that, we built the greatest economy the world has ever seen. And how did we do it? Through education, through investment in the people, the superhighway that Eisenhower built, the public education system that we built that we across this nation that had never been seen before. And
Hmm.
when, for instance, and I'm an elder person, when I was in high school, we benefited from this. We had tremendous public education investment. And I had to take a test, passing a test for the Constitution of the USA plus the Constitution for the state of Illinois to get from my junior to my senior year in high school.
Wow, that's a big demand, huh?
This is a contrast with the past 40 to 50 years where civics and political science and much of history has been taken out of the public education classroom. So we have a mass ignorance across this nation about what democracy means, what it entails, what we need to know, and we have a vast educational gap
And also of ethics, the ethics of learning, the ethics of valuing things. We got
Absolutely.
any of that.
Caring about the public as a whole, giving equal opportunity. That's what this is about. Equal opportunity to people to become business people, to become professors and teachers and scientists. And we created that, but in one sense, Trump is right. The ruling elites at the top of this food chain have that entry into that has become so expensive and costly that even the most capable people in a middle to lower middle class area can't get in to that
Mhm.
system to get the kind of education they need. We need to reform public education all over again, and we need to have schools, say 2-year county colleges that offer an associate's degree that makes you a licensed electrician, a licensed plumber, a licensed builder, and have the basic fundamentals and know how to create your own business. We
Mhm.
need that across the board. We need to reform our educational process. But that doesn't mean blowing up government, blowing up Harvard, blowing up all the greatest institutions in the world for scientific and academic research.
No, you're right.
So Trump has taken a bomb and he's planted bombs in all of these areas where we have proved ourselves to be the greatest in the world. But frankly, he is bringing out the disgruntled people who haven't had access to any of this, who
Mhm.
don't know enough to be able to
So you
intelligently
think they're
find out.
following him? They follow him because he looks like he's got the answer or
Yes, it look he they
power?
formed a kind of cult around him.
Hmm.
A cult because he has been gotten up and promised that I'm going to fix all this. You've been screwed and I'm going to fix this. Now he's been right that they have been screwed. But he is wrong about how he's fixing it because he is such a malignant narcissist that everything is about him. He is doing all these crooked deals with Saudi Arabia and the Middle East, and he's what called transactional, which means that he bribes everybody. If you do what I want, I'm going to slap tariffs, I'm going to slap penalties on everybody who doesn't do what I want. If you
Before you go past this section, I want to ask you something. When he says, yes, people have been screwed, can you explain a little bit of where the screwing comes? Like, I guess
Because public education has been basically abandoned gradually over the past, I'd say 40 years in this country. The
Mhm.
money isn't there. The people in the poorer areas, because most public schools are paid for by local property tax, they
So
have.
how did that change? Who tightened the screws?
All right. The problem is that we haven't listened much to the liberal side of the liberal has become uh, uh, because of
Wishy-washy.
effective media bashing. The word
Mhm.
liberal has become evil, taxes, everybody's going to get taxed. Meanwhile, while the richest Americans are not paying much in the way of taxes and their taxes are being reduced, uh, that is not happening to Americans as a whole. And
Mhm.
they've twisted messages to make people believe that they've been screwed by these so-called ruling elites. Instead of listening to people like Bernie Sanders, who's telling the truth about most of this, that we
That's why they don't like him.
Yes, we need to upgrade and finance education across this country so people have a shot at getting somewhere instead of failing in school, not knowing anything, not understanding the government, how it works, not understanding how to build a business. And many of our young people, the leading cause of suicide among young men in this country, the leading cause of death is suicide among young men in this country.
So
It's
sad.
pathetic. People are looking around, they do not see. And even if you get into college, the cost of college and university education is through the roof. And a lot of the curriculum does not play to what is needed for these people to be successful in the world today.
Well, I always want to add this other thing, which is we have not taught values throughout the education of kids.
Absolutely.
The value thing is out to lunch with sugar.
Democracy is based on the concept that we try to do the right thing for our brothers and sisters, which is a
Mhm.
Gemini concept, that everybody is our brother or sister in the world. The idea that we should get rid of these hierarchical things and say somebody is better because he's a billionaire or better because he's this or that or the other thing, and go back to the notion of equality of the soul, equality of opportunity. Everybody does not have equal abilities,
No,
but
of
they should
course.
have an equal shot, and they should be respected for what they can, what each person can do.
Right.
We should help each other. We should be supportive to one another. That under the soul itself, we all come in. We got to stop fighting wars with each other and
Mhm.
promoting hate. I mean, I have never in my lifetime seen such a promotion as hate as
Mhm.
as this time. I predicted in my book starting in 2008 to 2026 in that we would see the second American Revolution and the dark night of the soul in America, that we would be disestablishing the establishment. Those are words I used in my books and newsletter starting in 2007. And boy, has that played out in this
Mhm.
country. And
Mhm.
now I'm saying these planets are switching signs and giving us a key to not only how to rescue ourselves, but how to plan a society that is a combination of social programs that work to help people and entrepreneurial capitalism to stimulate people to be able to have their own businesses and run their lives. It's not an either or. It's not a battle between those two. It
Mhm.
has to be a balance between those two things, which has been lost because all the money is, quite frankly, in the pockets of people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and these billionaire, now trillionaire class of people who have this country's wealth. BlackRock alone, this big investment company, owns over 30% of American real estate. Can you
Mhm.
even imagine that?
No. Mm-mm.
And these companies that have bought up real estate since the crash of 2008, when a lot of real estate went bankrupt because of the subprime lending fiasco. What we have now is a bunch of corporations, and they are keeping the prices high and the rents high.
Do you remember Eisenhower warning about that years
Exactly.
ago? Yeah, he said,
It's
"Don't let it
interesting
happen," and it
how
has.
Eisenhower, a Republican, would be called a flaming liberal today. Absolutely. And it was under Eisenhower that we had so much wonderful, affordable housing that was built in this country. And we need to return. That's another thing I think we're going to start to return to.
Mhm.
Companies like BlackRock, there's a rumor, I'm not saying it's substantiated, that they
Mhm.
had an algorithm that say if you build an apartment complex with say 20 units in it, if you rent out 4 of those units at a huge rent, that you don't have to rent the rest of the units, you can allow them to remain vacant. So it pays them to charge huge rents. And if you can't pay them, they just remain, instead of marketplace determining what those rentals should be. In other words, come down in the rent, more people can afford to rent your complex. If you charge this huge rent for just a few of those apartments, you're better off than if you tried to rent your whole complex. This
But that's exactly like the very, very 1% gets all the money and they don't worry about who's left behind. The same thing with this
exactly.
rental thing.
That
Pay
should be
big bucks here, and
outlawed.
we don't care who doesn't live in these other
In
sections.
other words, we should say to the capitalist, you should charge what the market says you should charge to rent these things. That
Or
you
how much does it cost to put people in homes?
well, that's the problem. There's more and more people becoming homeless.
I know. It's just
The
heartbreaking.
homeless epidemic is like it was in the Great Depression of the 1930s. It's horrendous.
Mhm.
And the other thing, Trump stabbing at the healthcare system. Elon Musk goes in there and he fires over half of the personnel that manage Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And Trump says, "Oh, I'm not touching. They're going to be there and be unmanageable because no one
Mhm.
will be there to answer the phone or keep the things going." He's
Right.
killing them by firing everybody. Now, quietly, a lot of those people have been hired back because he's been losing in the courts. And now Elon is gone, and Trump can sort of blame Elon for some of this.
Oh, he always blames, doesn't he?
Yes, he blames everybody else for everything.
Hmm.
But my feeling is we needed, I even hate to say it because I have been just as despairing as most of the people that are watching this show and across this nation about Trumpism. We needed this situation to rub our faces in a reality that we haven't
Boot
been
us
able
up.
to
Hmm.
face.
Hmm.
We needed to have the pain in order to know where the illness is and make a diagnosis. I think with the planets changing signs, that we're going to get a preview this summer when all of those planets are in the new signs. Then in the fall, they retrograde back into the old signs. And by late April of 2026, they're in the new signs. My feeling is that in 2026, we're really going to start to realize what we need to do in this country, who
Hmm.
we need to elect. And I mean, I can't just blame Trump and the Republicans. The Democrats have really not formulated a message. They've refused to listen to Bernie Sanders and
I know. That's
AOC. They
funny,
said they're
isn't it?
too far to the left. The Democrats have also sold out to
Hmm.
the financial cartel to raise enough money for themselves to run. When you don't have campaign finance reform, and the Supreme Court says limitless amounts of money can be going into campaigns, guess who have the limitless amounts of money?
Oh, yeah, we
The
know.
corporate class. So
This is a little sidebar. Have you been paying attention to Jasmine Crockett in her interviews with various key people in the government?
no, I haven't.
You might want to do that, this for another talk, but she's really taking apart publicly some of the main people and what they're doing. She's
And
doing
that's a
a
good
great
thing
job. Yeah,
because
she's
we
doing a
need
brilliant job.
those people exposed. There is going to, the Republican Party as we once knew it is not. I mean, it's Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger who objected to Trump and lost their careers. There are some decent Republicans still there that do not want to see the country blown to smithereens on the
Right.
side. The MAGA party without Trump is not going to continue once he's gone. And Trump is in trouble. I mean, he has got some aspects in the first half of June, just at the time that he's going to have a big 79th, talk about elderly, 79th birthday party in Washington while they're celebrating an anniversary of the US military at a time when his chart is in grave danger. So
Mhm.
what could we see then? Somebody might attempt to shoot him like they did when I forecasted he was in danger in July of 2024. I thought maybe the scaffolding would fall on him or something. He had a very dangerous, so he may escape this, he may survive it, but that is because in astrology, we can see things, high probability of things, but whether a person survives it or not, we can't say absolutely.
But didn't you
Have
say, or other people have said as well, that his chart is one of the most wonderful charts for always getting through these awful things
Yes, Trump has
and
the
not being nailed, right?
luckiest natal chart most of us have ever seen. Just
Really?
just being fortunate. It doesn't say what his character is or what, just that he was lucky. He learned to master the art of the court system, mafia lawyers, and declaring bankruptcy and getting away with it. He through his whole life, this is what he's been doing. And I don't want to go into Trump's history and everything, which we can read about him. There are many good biographers who've written about him and how crazy he is and how lucky he is and how he has gotten away with everything.
Right.
But he is a show business personality, the master of reality. I would say that the closest to who he really is was WrestleMania when he got on that and
No.
franchise. But people out there who are angry and upset, they respond to this kind of thing. They think he's fighting for them. He's fighting for himself always,
Mhm.
as he's a malignant narcissist, and that's who he fights for. But people relate to that. So the Democrat,
Malignant implies kind of a contagious badness, doesn't it?
exactly, people say he's mad, I'm mad,
Yeah.
And at any rate, my feeling is that the Democrats have got to come up with charismatic and smart political. Bill Clinton and Barack Obama were two people that won elections. They were smart, they were charismatic, they knew how to deliver a message. The Democrats have to come up with people that the public resonates to them, and they also have to get out from under the thumb of the of other people who are controlling them. So both parties are at fault here. It's not just the Republicans, it's not Trump, it's the Democrats. They have to get out from underneath. They can't be afraid to say truths. Even if they were a part of creating the problems, they have to get up and they have to say, this is what is happening and this is what I'm going to do for you. And they have to be effective,
Mhm.
charismatic, younger. And I'm happy because I've seen the appearance of a few younger people that are starting to emerge. And this is what my prediction is. Over the next decade, we are going to see the dying out of the old guard. We're going to see new, exciting, and effective young people coming up, and they're going to run for office and they're going to get elected, and they're going to change the world and they're going to change this country. And I think the second American Revolution is going to be won once again for democracy. I believe
Okay.
that in my heart.
I want that.
And I say to people, watch what's going on, because a lot of the things Trump is doing, he's losing in the courts. He's
Mhm.
having to hire back personnel. He's attacked Harvard because guess what? Trump was rejected from Harvard when he applied, and his son Barron applied to Harvard and was rejected. And Trump just gets even with everybody who has ever rejected him or what, he gets even with them. So he's bashing Harvard because he and his son were rejected from Harvard.
Interesting how we all spend time on that kind of thing instead of going dismiss who's next.
Right.
But
But he
he
knows
takes
he's
a
the
lot of
master of
breath
the
out of the
media,
air.
and the media focuses on these things. And the other thing, there's the Democrats, the Republicans, and in the media. The media, I love, he's trying to kill off the best things. Like 60 Minutes is one of the
Mhm.
best investigative reporting we've ever had. Also, PBS, absolutely wonderful. Their news shows, their specials. Trump is trying to kill those things off because they're the most intelligent and honest and fair and presentations of the news. He's trying to take everything that is at the top of the heap and set a bomb and blow it up. He
Mhm.
wants to keep the nation dumb. He
Mhm.
wants to keep, because that's how he got into power. And he's not going to win this ultimately. I think he's going to lose this battle. Remember, this guy is turning 79.
Right.
He'll be the oldest president ever to have served this full term. The sad part was Joe Biden, who was failing in his health. And now we know that they were covering up Joe Biden's failing health. And the whole thing here is
Linda, he did some amazing things
he
before.
did some wonderful things. The CHIPS Act, the infrastructure bill, all he did wonderful.
Not getting enough
Also,
benefit from it. He's not getting enough recognition.
he's not getting enough credit for these, and Trump is trying to blow up everything he did, you
I
know.
know,
Uh,
yeah.
he will be looked back at as one of the better presidents, but unfortunately, he was too old. He knew it. He didn't really originally want to run for this, but they felt that he was the only person that could beat Trump in 2020, and they were right about that. That's the sad thing. And I feel badly for him and his family because, and he should have bowed out much sooner and let a primary take place.
But he did a lot of things while he didn't quite bow out yet, you know.
That was his biggest mistake, is he should have said, I know I have these problems. I'll finish my term, but let me bow out in time for the Democrats to have a primary so that
Mhm.
some newer people could have come. And the problem with Kamala Harris, although a good candidate, she was too representative and defensive of the Biden administration, which was
Okay.
terribly unpopular, which Trump made them unpopular because Trump convinced them that Biden hadn't done anything for them, you know.
But
And
it's interesting how easily the public can be swayed by somebody like Trump without assessing the actual activity of the
because
president.
there isn't the ability for intellectual analysis and surveillance out there. The kids, young people have not been educated to do this. You
Mhm.
can't, the price of eggs was caused by bird flu, which neither Trump or Biden had anything to do with. The price of housing, has Trump corrected that? No, that was a long-term problem. And
Mhm.
Biden tried to help, but many of these things that you pass in the legislature take months or years to come out on the other side. So what you pass takes a long time to build itself
See
up
the results, yeah.
and get a result. The public is into instant gratification, which is a very immature and almost silly thing, you know.
I keep saying it's a dearth of values. We don't teach values.
No, what do we really value? But I also say values, like you say, is number one. Let's help our brothers and sisters. Let's help each other rather than constantly bashing each other. Let's get
Oh,
over the hate message. Let's get into the warm. Let's help each other. Let's get together. Let's listen to each other, what we have to say, instead of just arguing and bashing each other all the time. But also, we have kids, by the time they're in ninth grade, they should have a decent course in economics and
yeah.
finance. We are uneducated.
Also arguing. I mean,
How did we get to this economic inequality?
mhm,
Educational inequality came from economic inequality. Like
mhm.
it or not, economics is the bottom line that influences people, how they think, and certainly how they vote. And Trump
But
had,
here's something else, Linda. I'm Canadian, and this whole thing about freedom of speech
oh, yeah,
makes me bonkers. I keep
yes,
saying, hey, you guys, words can kill.
mhm,
What we're
absolutely.
speaking about is a society that's had a lot of its oomph killed by judgments, attacks, freedom of speech, I think, you know?
Well,
Confused by that.
when people are not thoroughly abreast of what's going on, are educated about the fundamentals and the fact, they don't come to the media or reading a thing with eyes that are a part of critical thinking. They
That's
don't,
right.
they
Very good.
come eviscerally to
Mhm.
somebody says, you're bad. It's sort of looking like a violent computer game or things that we're used to, inured to in our media is all about fighting and killing each other and
An
being
instant reaction too.
heroes killing bad guys. That's the kind of thing that frames people's response.
I know, that's terrible.
This is, as I said, it goes back to economics and it goes back to a lack of education. Those two major things.
And
And
critical thinking, which you mentioned as well.
where does critical thinking come from? From education. I remember in my ninth grade civics class was the time I got ignited and thrilled and everything about American politics and American society, because we had to read the papers and talk about the issues that the politicians were running
Mhm.
against each other. And I had to read, and then we came into the class and in ninth grade and had debates about these issues.
Mhm.
I remember to this day my civics teacher, Mr. Crocker, who looked like a halfback for the Rams. He had gone to college after
You have a
5 years.
crush on him, Linda?
Yeah, yeah, honestly, he had fought in World War II. He went to college and got his master's on the GI Bill and was there teaching physics at a reduced salary because he was so passionate about letting the young people of this country know how this works. He was
Oh,
so
wow. Good
passionate
for
about
him.
it.
Mhm.
And I'll never forget him as long as I live. I'll never forget. There's certain teachers and professors that stand out in my mind. He set me on a personal track. I had to keep track. I had to know who's running. I had to know how the country worked. I had to know how the government
Wow.
worked.
That's
And
great.
that has been abolished from this country in my lifetime. I am a better educated person. I'll be 85 years old the end of July. I
Wow.
have a better education about those things, not about technology, but about history, civics, political science, literature, all of these things than my grandchildren have.
You
I
know, when I was in fourth grade, the nuns taught us that we had to have a percentage of the people be poor in order for the other people to have the money. I remember being sort of shocked by that. But they said that's just the way it is. And that has stuck with me because it seems so relentless or it's impossible to get
it
past.
is because we don't see, I'm an idealist. You talk about
I am
idealism.
too, actually, when I'm
I
not
believe
disgruntled.
that our systems like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid have helped with that.
Hmm.
The year I was born in 1940, it was like 69% of elderly people lived in abject poverty because
Mm.
there was no Social Security had been passed earlier, but it hadn't been distributed yet. I grew up at the end of the Great Depression. I saw homeless people at the railroad tracks. I saw a history that young people just don't have. That's the value of us old folks staying alive if we can, getting
Hmm.
our MRIs and our blood tests so we can stay alive to pass this on. And yet I was a part of a generation that grew up with such high hopes for America, the civil rights revolution, and all of these, which we're still fighting. We're
Hmm.
still fighting major inequality due to race and ethnic group. And Trump wants to throw out all the immigrants and everybody who is has a brown skin or whatever, throw them out, bring in the Afrikaners who there wasn't any. He made all of that up, those things he showed on television where the Democratic Republic of the Congo, they had nothing to do with what was going on in South Africa. He had.
That's freedom of speech. That's the thing that bothers
Well,
me.
the freedom of speech doesn't give you the opportunity of lying without being called on the carpet for it. Freedom of
It does
speech
for
means
some people.
you have the freedom to lie and to get on a show and lie. But then there has to be people that say, you're lying. And that is what freedom of speech is about, is and where do you go for the truth? That's the big struggle people have, because
And where do you go for the truth?
this
Good
is the
question.
problem, because there are no standards. Interestingly, looking into history, back in 1987, under the Reagan administration and the Democratic majority in Congress, there up to that point, there had been a law that said if you are a TV or radio news person, or a newspaper person that it was not on the editorial page with the headline. You had to report the truth, the verifiable truth. If you weren't, you could be prosecuted. You could you could go be
But the
sued.
verifiable part has changed, right?
They dropped that law
Yes.
under the Reagan years in 1986, 87. Ted Koppel, a number of years ago, appeared on Coast to Coast Radio right before I appeared, and he talked about, he was one of the greatest newscasters of all time,
It was,
TV.
yeah.
And he reported on this. He said, do you realize what happened? They got rid of that law. They got rid, and since that time, we created the internet, social media, cell phones, all of this that are reporting lies and further stoke hatreds, by the way. There are no law standards for information now. Anywhere that they can't be sued, they can't go to jail, they can say anything they want, as Trump does. He lies about almost everything he's ever said. And
Let me ask you an astrological question. Do you see the planets moving some of that need for integrity forward? You know what I mean?
yes,
Is there a,
yes.
yes.
Saturn will be conjuncting Neptune right now, by the way. Saturn has just gone into Aries, conjuncting Neptune. It's going to sextile that Uranus and sextile Pluto in 2026.
Now, Saturn is where things settle down and become a pattern and they're kind of
Right.
contained. Is that
We
right?
are going to, this Aries is a sign that initiates, it's brand new, it's young people, it's new energy. Uranus is information. Pluto is tech, and Aquarius is mass technology. They're going to work together, and Saturn will help frame it to hold people accountable for what
Okay, good.
they're saying. That is going to happen. It's not with us now.
Mhm.
And this is how Trump has gotten away. And by the way, before he took office, the Supreme Court ruled that he can commit crimes while
I
in office
know. Oh
and
my
not
gosh.
be arrested for them. That what
Mhm.
a disastrous decision that was. I don't think any of the framers of the Constitution wanted that, but they didn't even think of it because they never thought a president. They had this wonderful person, George Washington, who they offered him a kingship, said, you can become king of America. He says, no, this is a democracy. People voted for me. I am a person that represents the people. I'm simply a leader of the people. I am humble before the people. I will not be a king. And King George, by the way, Mad King George, whose chart is like Trump, said at the time, George Washington will go down as the greatest person in human history at that time because he
Wow.
realized the power that Washington could have had as king of America. And he revoked it and said, no, I'm a president that is the heading up of a country by and for the people. This is what we're going to revisit. We have had Mad
God.
King George now, we have had a taste of what it's like to have a real dictator in office and how he defies the rule of law all over the place. The only course they have is to take him to court. And in many cases, the people that are suing him are winning. They're putting some employees back into positions, agencies in Washington. But in the last analysis and in the end, the Supreme Court, by ruling that a president can't be, and there's nothing in the Constitution that said a president can't be arrested for a crime, but there's nothing that says he can either. This is
No.
the part we're going to have to revisit the Constitution and rewrite it, which we will. We're going to add amendments to the Constitution, I'd say in the next 5 to 10 years, that are going to amend many of the things that we have found out can be abused, that can
Well,
just.
so here's another question I want to throw right in the middle of what you're saying is that as a reader, I keep seeing that there's this fleck of evolution trying to rise among I'm gathering about 30% of the population.
I
And I
agree.
wonder if you have any astrological comments on that.
I believe if you're talking about consciousness evolution and
Mhm.
spiritual evolution, absolutely. I believe, as I said, there's young people, some of the older people like us that are going to hopefully be there to take their hands and help them over. The few of us that have survived this, that have stood in our own truths and made personal sacrifices to remain in professions that hopefully guide people into higher consciousness, into a more loving world, into a more inclusive world. Those of us that are still here, for my grandchildren, I have some grandchildren, okay, they love to come and see me because we're so cool. My husband and me, that they're cooler than our own generation is because they yearn to hear this. They yearn
Mhm.
to hear beyond just what the world that they're up against, that we have hope for the future, that there are new things going to happen, that they have a shot at changing the world, and that they are these people that can open their souls and their psyches to a higher
Wow. So
consciousness.
they're growing into that. They're bringing it with them.
I believe in them. I
Isn't
believe
that
in these
wonderful?
people. I think that these young people are going to emerge. And fortunately, they had the media to get on. That's the good part of the mass media and everything. They have a mass media, including podcasts like this and other ways of getting on and giving a message. But I still feel we need to go back to being more a part of our local neighborhoods and our local communities. We've kind of
Mhm.
abandoned that. People,
I just want
uh,
to say one thing about what you were saying about the media is that some of them are using it optionally by choice to educate themselves.
yes,
And that is a wonderful
it's a
possibility. I just
wonderful
want to
thing.
put that in there as a little positive here.
Veronica, you're so right. AI, people are so scared of AI. I
Mhm.
am not at all. I
Oh, you're
think,
not?
no, I think AI gives us a place to go for information the likes of we have never had before. The whole thing is like the rest, like the meat. When the internet started, nobody thought of cybersecurity. I've actually talked to some people that were there technically at the beginning of the internet, and they say to me, no one thought of this, that
Mhm.
the cybersecurity, that was going to be all kinds of hacking and all kinds of bad stuff that was going to happen with the advent of the internet. Now, with the advent of AI, there've got to be protections. There's got to be laws that govern it. Remember,
Right.
AI comes from people. It didn't come out of nowhere. It is
Mhm.
people designed. The information that goes in there is put in there by people. And yes, it has the ability to reason and
Mhm.
to draw, but still all of the information that's in there was put in there by people, and the systems are controlled by people. So we as a human race have to fix AI so it isn't hacked into or ruined or a lot of misinformation going in there, which is what's happened up to now. So but AI can save us, educate us. It can really help us if we learn how to use it as a tool for learning. And that's important. And I think it can be a great thing. As far as getting rid of jobs, yes, AI is going to eliminate a lot of jobs. Computer programmers, AI can kind of create programs for itself, that computers that program for itself. We've known this was coming for a long time, but the kind of imagination that it takes to use technology to create great things is
Mhm.
still going to be a human process. It's going to
Mhm.
be, for instance, my favorite place to go with that is nuclear fusion. I think within the next few years,
You've spoken of that for a long
oh, okay.
time. Keep
With Pluto
talking, my
in Aquarius, Uranus in Gemini, Neptune, and nuclear fusion by 2026, the public is going to know about this, and it is going to be up and running at least at one site. This is a way of creating energy through splitting the hydrogen atom. It's going on all over the country and all over the world. And I'm one of the few people on my website newsletter that is reporting articles from Scientific American, online science things that the public, the media has not reported on this. Livermore in California, Helion in Seattle, Washington, Commonwealth in Cambridge, Massachusetts, all of these. And I'm here to report also that Republican Governor Youngkin of the state of Virginia has signed a contract with Commonwealth Systems to put a nuclear fusion chamber up in Virginia. He's already broken ground to start it, which will provide all the electricity that the state of Virginia needs. It will be the
Wow.
breakthrough of our century, that nuclear fusion will end the age of fossil fuel, that we will
Wow.
have limitless amounts of energy with no pollution. There's also the hydrogen era. We're going to be hydrogen batteries, hydrogen fuel cells. And recently they have discovered massive amounts of hydrogen between the Alps, between where the world's mountains lie, in the cracks underneath those regions, in the Himalayas and in the Alps. And that is going to be part of this revolution. We are going to end the age of fossil fuel, and we are going to find solutions. We're still suffering the pangs of climate catastrophes, which will
Oh
last
boy.
us and can't be. Certain parts of the world will become uninhabitable. But we will we will have the science.
We might be able to resurrect those.
Yes, and we'll have the science. The thing about Pluto and Aquarius is the science is going to be incredible. The last time that was there was the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. It was when Benjamin Franklin discovered electricity.
Oh, wow.
It was in those early intellectual people that started formulating the foundation for the Industrial Revolution. This is going to, and of course, Uranus in Gemini was when we dropped the atomic bomb on
Oh,
Japan,
Lord.
when we created atomic energy. The last Uranus in Gemini, this Uranus in Gemini is going to be nuclear fusion instead of nuclear bombs, which nobody wants to drop because the leading nations all have nuclear weapons. If you drop, if Russia should take a nuclear weapon on anybody, the United States or some other company will drop a nuclear weapon on Russia. So that situation prevents this from happening. That's what the Cold War was about. As long as we kept up with each other and had equally bad weapons, nobody dared to use one against somebody. So it's going to be the next, instead of nuclear fission, if everybody saw the great movie Oppenheimer, which every single
Wonderful
citizen of
movie. I
this
like,
country
yeah,
should see, it's a
it's very good.
masterpiece. What he went through, they said the next thing will be the hydrogen bomb. They understood fusion at that point. That was really, this is going to be the big deal of the 21st century. And
Wow.
it will change everything. And you don't hear about this broadly across the media because the oil and gas companies do not want anybody to know about it.
Well, I want to change the subject a little bit, but talking about oil and gas and power issues and so on kind of fits into this. I'm wondering if astrologically, is the planet going to embrace more protection against abuse? The
Yes,
levels, we were hearing some stories about Trump and sexual abuse on Epstein and these various things, and I don't want to get into that except, is it going to rise? The evolution we kind of touched on, is the evolution revolution going to pull a lot of that stuff up and out, or what do you think?
absolutely. When you have a person who has a conscience, who is informed about the issues of our times, who cares about other people, you don't even have a question of abuse. When a
Mhm.
person's psyche is evolved to a certain level, they're not going to abuse anybody. They're not going to
No.
sexually abuse or beat somebody up or destroy some. When that evolutionary process takes place, that's where we're headed. We're not here yet,
Thank
obviously.
God.
That's where and a lot of the things, the Me Too movement, the Black Lives Matter movement that have happened in recent years are a part of a social awareness of how uh, women have been abused and people of color have been abused through the ages, and how this doesn't pay. We're all each other in a sense. We should have equal opportunities. We should not be killing each other. We should not be using and abusing each other. That is an evolutionary leap that we now have the opportunity to make.
And
And
we have to make that.
and everybody equally is not going to make that leap. There will
Hey,
always
I want
be.
to throw another thing in, which sort of fascinates me, and I don't have enough moxie in my history, but how many leaders of huge movements around the world have been by, for example, brown-skinned women?
Yeah.
I think there's some
There,
amazing
yep.
historical heroes.
Absolutely. Women in African nations and around that have become prime ministers, and in these nations. The only problem with many of these nations, even though they elected a woman prime minister, their underlying ills were never fixed.
Yeah,
So they
exactly.
still wind up being as poor as they were, because until you can transform the economies of these nations, where in Africa, in Central South America, where Western European, US nations go in and mine all of their minerals and resources and enslave the people there that work there, until you get over that kind of colonialism. It isn't even colonialism, it's
It's
inhabiting.
an act of abuse. My goodness.
It's abuse. And those people don't really, but they bring, like in an African nation, they'll bring in a dictator to take over that nation who slaughters his own people
Hmm.
in return for making deals with the oil companies or the diamond mine companies or the gold companies or whatever, that we can rob them of all of that, have
Hmm.
basically slave labor over there, and this guy will get paid off by us, and his nation has no economy, no equality,
Hmm.
nothing. It just, and again, that guy winds up getting overthrown by another ruthless dictator, and it goes on and on. And meanwhile, the greatest catastrophes in climate as a result of uh, of of us using so much fossil fuel are affecting the continent of Africa and Central and South America disproportionately to what they they didn't participate in it really that much. What we've done has created this mess so that they can't even, their areas are now deserts. They can't farm there anymore. They can't live there anymore. This is a consequence of global climate catastrophes. I don't even use the word change. Climate has always changed. I'm talking about global climate catastrophes that are eliminating the possibility of life and economies existing in certain parts of the world. That's a catastrophe.
And the recognition of what they're doing is
Right.
kind of minimal, as long as
And
they.
my feeling is always, I love, we have solar panels, all the things that you're trying to do. But none of it means much when you're burning, in China, they're burning all this coal to create solar panels. And they're
Right.
burning oil and gas over here to create the electricity that your EV is hooked into.
Yeah, exactly. Isn't that interesting?
It doesn't make any sense until you have nuclear fusion, that we're no longer using and burning fossil fuel. We're creating limitless amounts of electricity where we can manufacture everything and drive all the cars and everything without using fossil fuel. That is the fundamental solution. That is the holy grail of
Mhm.
fixing environmental. But unfortunately, over the centuries we've been doing this, it's not going to get fixed overnight.
Well, it's going to take a lot of education as well, back to that
And we're going to have that. I
subject.
believe we're going to have that. Uranus in Gemini, I'm happy to say. I'm excited about this. I really feel when people weren't paying attention, I predicted the Second American Revolution, the Dark Night of the Soul. I predicted the crash of 2008. my husband and I moved inland to a place of elevation where there's
Mhm.
plenty of fresh water and farmland and a leading university, which was the advice I gave my clients at Ithaca, New York. And we moved there in 2008, right before the crash that I had predicted on, online, my newsletters and in my books and everything. And so we followed our own advice. That's
I honor that. But also, we're coming to the end, and I want you to make sure that people know how to find both your books or your website or all of the
right.
above.
My website, the address is Soothesayer. That's Soothesayer. I'm a soothsayer.
I love that name.
Or you can Google Linda Schurman Astrologer. And my name is spelled Schurman. Linda Schurman Astrologer will get you right to my webpage, and you can click right into the newsletter. Either way. My newsletter goes up every other month. I do 2 months predictions at a time. And my books are listed on there, are on Amazon. My first book is out, first and second book are kind of out of print. My third book is still in print, Our Choice, Extinction or Evolution, where I co-authored with Rich Spitzer, who is a financial analyst from Wall Street.
Mhm,
That was published in 2017. So my first book was in 2007, and my
mhm.
third book was in 2017. When you go to my website, you will see them listed, or you can go to Amazon. They're
And
still
one of your
listed.
books is called What's Next? Does that
Yeah,
mean
the
you're doing
first book
another
that
What's
I
Next?
wrote was called What Next? A
Okay.
Survival Guide to the 21st Century. And ironically, everything that has been coming true recently is in that first book
Whoa,
this
good
year.
for
So I'm
you.
happy to say, I feel now that the future has unfolded, that what I studied, and believe me, I am not an economist, I'm not an environmental scientist. I went and read good books and online posts from those people, the good economists and the climate scientists, the people from Woods Hole. Astrology directs you to the information, but you have to do your homework and go to the experts in those fields to see how it's going to play out. My specialty has always been realistic astrologer. How is it playing out in our lives today and in the future? What does it mean on a very practical, and also the level of ideals? Where are
Mhm.
we going to be better and greater and more loving and more kind and more cooperative? Those are all covered in the subject of astrology.
Wonderful. Well, Linda Sherman, you're amazing. And I don't know what to say, except I always love speaking with you. And I always feel like we just got going. We have to do this again.
Thank you. I always love being on your show, Veronica.
Yeah, it's great to be with you.
And
Thank you
thank you
so
very
much.
much.
Thank you so much. We'll talk soon.